Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of TacTalk, a new video series where we sit down with special guests, community members, and subject matter experts to chat about Arma, tactics, gaming, and everything in between. Today, I'm joined by a name probably many of you already know from the Arma community, King Alex, a YouTuber and former British sniper. Alex, thanks for coming by and hanging out with me today.
Thank you very much for having me, dude. Appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mentioned a small bit, but can you tell us a little about yourself and your background?
Yeah, sure. So I served with the army for about 8 years, just shy of 8 years. I did two deployments, one to Iraq, one to Afghanistan, and sort of many overseas exercises. Completed the sniper course. Eventually became a sniper pair commander. I ran sniper courses myself, training other nations and training obviously junior soldiers coming through.
Well, that training might help me today. I'm gonna need all the help I can get.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. I'm sure we can get you through. I'm sure we can get through.
Yeah, so I'm definitely experienced in this, and the one thing I think we want to focus on today is also a lot of people who play Arma, specifically, like to jump in, do a lot of the behind the scenes or behind enemy lines, sniper shooting and things like that. But I do have a curiosity of like, you hear people want to do sniping. What is the biggest misconception about the job, about being a sniper?
The biggest misconception is definitely that you're just shooting people all day long. That's very very uncommon in a real conventional sort of war. Um, Basically, the key role of a sniper is to locate, observe, and destroy key enemy personnel and equipment through the use of indirect and precision direct fire. So actually, firing your sniper rifle is one part of a much larger role. The main roles will be obviously to locate and observe, go out, find enemy forces, locate where they are. So the biggest job of snipers and reconnaissance team is to just find and fix the enemy, which means go out, find them, and watch them and tell us what's happening, and then we can plan off that. That's the biggest role, and that is what you'll spend 90% of your time doing, is just watching the enemy and reporting.
As you kind of said, there's a team when it comes to sniper, and I plan to play the role of your spotter today. At least you're gonna try to teach me. It may not go well, but yeah. So on a high level, what is the breakdown for a sniper spotter team? Is it just two man team usually, or is there more people, or how many? How does that team work together?
So in the British Army, it was structured quite differently to maybe perhaps the US Army. In the British Army, you would have a platoon of blokes broken down into a couple of sections or squads, as it's called in the US Army, which are then broken down further into about two or three sniper pairs. And each sort of squad or section would be given an AO, and those pairs would work sort of co located. So they wouldn't be together, but they would be mutually supporting each other within an AO. And each sort of squad or section would then have a larger AO that they would occupy as well. So just the ground's getting bigger at each point. A pair will have, maybe a kilometer or two radius around them with mutually supporting pairs. And then that squad will have maybe 5-6 kilometers radius with mutually supporting squads for the whole platoon. So that's kind of how it's broken down. How far you would push out or how far you couldn't push out would be entirely dependent on the assets available to you. So if you're working at a battalion level and you only have mortars as your fire support, you could only push out, say, 5 kilometers ahead of your friendly troops or the flot. So you could only push 5 kilometers past the forward line of own troops. If you're working at a much larger level, maybe a brigade or whatever, and you have access to artillery, that number is obviously then significantly pushed further out, to sort of 15, 20 kilometers. So depending on what assets you've got, depends massively on how far you go out and what your AO will kind of look like. But it's normally a pair working to mutually support other pairs as part of a larger squad who may be tasked with one platoon or group, or it could be all squads working together. It's very flexible, and that's kind of sometimes why people struggle to work out how to use a sniper pair.
Yeah, there's a lot more communication with the larger whole than just them sneaking behind the line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you said the spotter, you got promoted and you went to the spotter role. Is like who's in charge normally on the field? Is it the spotter who's like usually the higher rank, or the person in responsibility, or is it the other way around?
Yeah. So the spotter is the person with the higher rank 9 times out of 10. There are exceptions to the rule. Let's say a private or rifleman has been a sniper for 6 years, and a lance corporal just passes the course. There may be the time where someone of a lower rank is higher, but pairs are, because they're quite close. They normally, that rank stuff kind of goes out the window a bit. They're very close. The spotter's never going to be like, you need to do this, unless he's a muppet. He might well tell him then. But 9 times out of 10, if the sniper's got a good idea, or he goes, that doesn't look right, mate, maybe we should try this, they're going to listen to each other. And they're all controlled then over by the sniper commander, who runs all, 2 or 3 different pairs in that AO.
Let's talk about like gear a little bit, because you said they're the ones doing all the thinking brains and stuff like that, and they're taking notes. What kind of differences would there be in the kind of equipment that they would have? Obviously, the sniper would have some sort of sniper rifle, but can you give the breakdown a little bit on what that would look like?
Yeah, so I won't go into sort of specific equipment names. However, the sniper himself will carry his individual weapon system. So, like I've got now, my M16. He'll then carry a sniper rifle as well, and then he'll normally have a pistol with him, a couple of grenades, maybe 10 mags or for the individual weapon and 5 for the sniper. Various smokes. It's heavy work. Sniping's heavy work. There's a lot of kit to carry, and then the spotter will normally have a marksman rifle or a normal rifle, and they'll carry all different types of thermal optics, night visions, all the different spotting scopes. So the sniper carries more weaponry, however the spotter tends to carry more equipment.
Oh,
And that's
so
kind of
so
how.
you're saying this giant backpack that I have is actually a good thing?
Yeah, that's pretty realistic. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you would have like a lot of equipment. You wouldn't just be wearing like pretty much ghillie suit only throughout in the field.
No, yeah. So what normally would happen is we would deploy in fatigues like we are now, or combat fighting order as we called it. And then when we sort of got near to where we were going to have to start stalking, we would get the 338 out or the sniper rifle out, and then don the ghillie suits and stuff like that, and then crawl into position sort of from there. But normally, because you're covering such large amounts of ground, you'll be in normal fatigues, helmet, weapon, stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. And then you have a massive backpack.
All right, so yeah, I got my backpack. I got. You said normally you actually wear helmets and your normal stuff out front, but since we'll be kind
I
of going into a
did.
mission, it might
However,
we're gonna be stalking a little bit. So
yeah, however, the first rule of all warfare is you got to look good. And helmets don't look good.
okay,
In the army, we always used to say, look good, feel good, fight good. So
okay,
the boonie hats, they work. Let's keep them.
okay. All right, sounds good. Do these spotters usually carry like big optics as well and on their guns, or is it more defensive security setup?
So they do have a defensive security setup. A lot of their long range optics will be handheld optics, or
Hmm.
optics that are put on tripods and stuff like that. So it is more of a defensive task, although you do still need to be able to punch out to some ranges for whatever reason. So yeah, like what normally happened, what we would do is the sniper would have a bolt action rifle. Hint, hint. When are they coming? And then the spotter would have a DMR, with sort of like an ACOG on it or something like that. So it can be used up close, but it's still got a decent amount of range. However,
Yeah.
for this, I think something, you could even run a very similar kit to me. We could be a sniper spotter pair with both running sort of very similar kits. The one thing I will say, you're going to want a lot of smoke grenades, because anytime you get into a contact, you are almost guaranteed to be outnumbered. So you're going to be wanting to withdraw from that firefight rather than try and win that firefight. So anytime you get contact that's not you're sniping at somebody, say we're en route to our mission. We come across a patrol, they engage us. We're not staying and fighting. We are getting rounds down range, throwing smoke grenades, and bugging out of there.
Like colored smokes, is there a use for them specifically like, is it a universal language of the color, or is it kind of decided beforehand?
Not particularly. I mean, I've only ever used colored smoke grenades for references. So green smokes and stuff like this, or red. You might throw a yellow smoke and be like, "Hey, land at this point. This is the heli landing zone. I'm going to mark it with yellow smoke." Or you might throw green smoke and be like, "Enemies on green." If you're calling in Kaz, or you could be like, if it doesn't reach them, you can be like west of green smoke, enemy in that tree line, or you could even mark your own position. Probably not the wisest because you're gonna have all you're gonna be able to see is smoke. But you could say friendlies on yellow, anything west of that engage to Kaz. That's the only time I've ever used colored smoke. Normally, it's always just been white if we're using it for deception or flanking or withdrawing.
All right, how do I look?
You're looking the part. You're looking dangerous.
I think so too. So today, obviously, we have a little mission I've set up for you as part of this tag talk. We like to put everything that we're talking about into practice a little bit. Today, our task is to work as a kind of sniper spotter team as best we can, or a pair, as you called it, to not only locate a little base at St. Pierre, where there is something set up, and be able to do a little recon, but there is reports of an officer down there that we can either try to eliminate and destroy anything, call on fire support on in that area to, trying to wreck their base a little bit. So that way we can do a little bit of seeing how you would operate in the field. But looking at it, we're just starting up here at near Levis. What kind of like approaches, or how do you like start planning the type of routes and areas that you should avoid and kind of take in consideration when you look at setting up an objective area?
Okay, so I was in light infantry, so I walked everywhere. However, I'm assuming we won't be doing that today because it'll take a very long fucking time. But there is a couple of things we can go through, which is actually really handy. And this is kind of things we used to plan. So we had like a little list of things that we would consider when selecting a route. We used to remember it by PW Camdras, which stands for, it's like things you want to avoid. So like plowed fields because they bog you down, wildlife because you don't want to disturb the local wildlife. So cows are curious, they'll come up and have a look, and sheep are sheepish, they'll run off. So like this kind of wildlife is like unnatural behavior, and it can alert the enemy. So we'd always try and avoid wildlife. The last thing you want to do is like crawl into position, and then the next thing you know, a big cow's stood over you. Like, what are you guys up to? So you kind of have to take these things into consideration. We'd also like always stop, look, and listen. So we would like pause at various points, listen to what's going on, listen to what the atmospherics are saying, kind of waiting for that spidey sense, that tingly feeling of something's not right. We're constantly changing directions as we're going along. Roads and tracks, we're kind of trying to avoid them, and we're going to cross them at bends so that we're minimizing how far down a road you could be seen by. Mm-hmm. You're never ever going to walk on them for an extended period of time. Like, it's just not going to happen. You're going to get caught. We try and avoid steep slopes because it tends to like lead to you being skylined, which is where your silhouette is really obvious against the sky behind you. And secondary to that, we'd also try and have backdrop behind us. If we're moving along something, we're going to want to be moving in front of a forest or moving in front of a bush line, so that there's something behind us, and we're not just like kind of in the open with a clear backdrop behind our silhouette. That's kind of how we would plan these things.
So from top here, what kind of position would you think is the best locations for St. Pierre, given the circumstance?
That northern slope mountain ridge by Pick Mountain, it's looking pretty good. However, it's very sparse, quite high up, around like the 180, 200 sort of height above sea level. It's very sparse. It's just basically just rocks. And then as we come down to sort of about 50 meters above sea level, where that woodland is, that's we're sort of within like 300 meters ish of the enemy position, so which is not great. We want to be a little bit further away from that. So perhaps, our best bet possibly would be actually to be coming south along Castle Ridge towards Montfort Castle, because there is woodline above St. Pierre that should have height advantage. That's sitting at about 150 above sea level. St. Pierre is only about, well, 5 meters because it's a harbour. So that's probably our best bet, because we'll be in the woodline and we might be able to find some nice loopholes onto St. Pierre where we can actually get eyes on without being massively exposed. Even though the other side is higher, we're not really going to have any cover or concealment up there. So I think the southern route's probably going to be the best.
Gotcha. What is an usual effective range, do you think? Is it dependent just on the weapon and caliber that you're using? Or is there a certain, like, sweet zone for engagements?
So yeah, it's definitely obviously dependent on your weapon system. However, we used to plan off the standards we would have to meet is at 400 meters you would be expected to hit a headshot. Up to 900 meters was expected to be a first round hit, and up to 1400 meters you would be expected to harass the enemy. So not necessarily hit them, but definitely be close enough to get their heads down. And that's kind of a role you would partake. Say maybe you'd sit sort of like a mile off a position. You just shoot at a sentry point. They now have to get down. Everybody in the base has got to get their kit on, get ready to fight because they might be attacked. And you just let them be. Even if you don't hit them, they're now scared. They're now on edge. They're now waiting to fight. They get all ready. You're not letting them sleep. You're constantly fatiguing them, sapping their will to fight. That's kind of a role we would take. And you should be expected to do that up to at least 1400 meters.
What happens if you were to, let's say, you talked about the castle or that area. Let's say you had pre-planned an area that you wanted to set up and you had found enemies there. Do you set up usually like backup locations for recon, or is it like you just go there and kind of wait and see and then move if you need to?
If you're going out to like recon something, say if we were going to go out and we were going to like recon maybe a mortar pit or a observation post, we would normally like have a look at least 3 sort of positions we could use, like a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary, and maybe even a contingency one. If all 3 are no good, that's normally a thing we would do, because we would have a couple of options before we even went out the door, just from a map recce. We would have a look on the map and see, this is a good point, this is a good point, this is a good point. And then if we go to the first one, it's no good, we've still got options. We haven't then got to sit in a forest looking at a map, trying to work out what we're going to do,
But you said you would normally huff it on foot, so I guess we better start walking.
Yeah, normally we would do everything on foot. Yeah. That's how we would do it.
This is why you gave me all the equipment, right? You wanted me to carry it all.
Exactly.
So we've just managed to trek ourselves a little bit already, all the way just west of St. Pierre here. Yeah, so where from here should we move? Should we get closer to the city? Do you usually like recon from a distance as you get closer, or is it like you just checking as you go?
So normally what you want to try and do is be as far away as you can to get eyes on. And if you come to me right now and you look sort of down this bearing here, you can actually see the city through the wood line. Just kind of make out the buildings and stuff there.
Yeah.
This is kind of exactly the kind of thing we're looking for. Obviously, this isn't where we're going to be, so we'll need to find a similar position like this further sort of south. But this is kind of where you want to be. You don't want to be sat at the edge of the wood line looking in. You kind of want to be like getting eyes through all this different stuff. Because looking back, it's going to be way harder for them to spot you than us looking through there at them. Whereas if you were sat right on that wood line, you're going to get pinged really easily. So we would always try and find positions like this and try and spot from as far back as we could. Sometimes that's not always possible. You might have to get close, but then what I would normally do if I was stalking, if I had to get close to see something, I would then kind of know where it is, and then I would try and move myself backwards again to see, to get as far away as I could where I still had line of sight. That's kind of how you would play this thing.
And who's you said the spotter is usually the guy who's doing all the planning and thinking, and the sniper is shooting. But let's just assume I don't know anything, right? uh, which I definitely do as the spotter in here. But what kind of information would and what is my role exactly? Like, what kind of information should I be providing you, even as we're walking here? Is it is it very much just obviously a lot of this might be pre-planned, correct?
Yeah, to some aspect, it's going to be pre-planned. Like we're going to have, sort of nav checks where we'll stop and have a quick discussion about where we're going to go. But at this point, we're going to kind of be working as a team pretty closely anyway.
Okay.
So what will generally work out is like the spotter would decide what direction we're going to go. So he might say, "Hey, we're going to continue following and handrail the rear side of this wood line that we're on. We're going to follow it down south and come sort of southeast, heading underneath Montfort Castle. We're going to try and get eyes on an OP or an FFP, sort of southwest of Saint Pierre. Those are observation points or final firing positions, which is where you'll take a shot from." However, he might tell me that as the sniper, and then me personally as the sniper, it will be my job to select the route. So you'll tell me what direction you want to go and the rough outline, but it will be me who decides, okay, I'm going to go this way through this bit, really using the micro terrain to be like, this is going to give me more cover on my flank. Maybe we'll come through here. So this kind of navigation will be down to the guy in front. However, the spotter will probably decide the general route. That being said, we're going to be so tight-knit and so closely working as a team. If I step sort of this way and you go, "Nah, dude, go up this way," I'll go, "Yep, no worries." And if you give me a route and I think, I don't actually know if that works, I can more than likely say to you, "Why don't we try this one?" Because we're so used to working together. We're so comfortable with each other. Like, I'm not a lunatic. I know you're not a lunatic. So if you've made a mistake, it's a genuine mistake, and we can kind of work off that. Rather than in sort of the rifle companies where you have people straight out of basic training, they're getting told what to do by a guy who's been in the army 10 years. We've got a way more comfortable relationship.
Yeah, you and I have been working for years.
That's it. That's it. But you see as well how much more cover we've got moving across sort of this area than if we were following that high line up there. How much more exposed we'd be, even though we'd have better view. You've still got a really good view just by dropping down here and following this side of the mountain. We call this contouring. So instead of standing up the top of a hill and wandering ourselves down, we're just going to come along the side of it, basically following the contour lines of the map and keeping ourselves a little bit more hidden.
How much, obviously I was looking at the sun as it shone through, how much is consideration into the elements, like including time of day, the sunlight and things like that, do you have to take in as you're moving?
Yeah, so you kind of don't want to be, you obviously have to pay attention to where the shadows are going to be. You don't want to be in a position, have to wait there like 3 hours, and then before you know it, the sun's shining on the other side of you, and now you've got a massive shadow being cast along a long field or something like that. That's never a good thing. And obviously the weather is what it is. It does what it wants, My instructor said to me, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad decisions. I personally disagree. I think there's a lot of things called bad weather. But yeah, you kind of just got to work with what you got, You can only play the cards you get dealt. And sometimes you have to just make adjustments as and when you need to. You can plan all you want, but, I've been in many positions where I've just had to completely rechange my plan because it was just, the heavens opened or, it was dark and cloudy. And now this place I'm going to go is bathed in bright sunlight. So you do have to just kind of keep adapting and remain flexible, really.
So we can definitely see a lot of the town from this one spot here. So would you adjust your final fire position if you were like, oh, this is a way better spot than we originally could ever have hoped?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you don't really tend to plan your final fire position. That's kind of just something you would find on the ground when you got there.
Mm-hmm.
However, you may have a rough idea of where you want to stalk to. However, like you said, somewhere like this is perfect. If we've got eyes on what we want to have eyes on, be that the HVT, I can see some enemy movement down there now. And if we think we can make this work from here, we'll just set up here. If we think this is good, it's pretty good concealment. We're pretty covered. We can see a lot of the town. So yeah, we might even engage from here if we felt we could do it. And likewise, if we get set up here and then we realize actually it's not going to work, we can just move. We just have to let the sniper commander know actually this isn't going to work. We're going to move position, and depending on how soon to timings that is, he might get a bit annoyed with you. But at the end of the day, the best thing you can do is just be honest. If you get in a position, you say this is going to work, and then you realize it's not going to work, instead of trying to bluff it and make it work, you just put your hand up and say, actually, I've made a bad call. This isn't good. I need to move. Yeah, so I think we're going to have to push a little bit further across anyway. I mean, just having a swag estimate at the range of where the officer and how we need to recon, we're looking at over a kilometer there, really. So we're going to have to keep pushing a little bit more, but this is actually a really good spot.
I mean, if anything, it's really beautiful. Yeah. It's really beautiful.
It's very beautiful. It's very beautiful.
I might have mentioned it earlier, but there is a potential to call in mortar strikes that we need to hit this base as well. So how would you play into that a bit when you're pre-planning your setup? Obviously, would you have constant communication with them about, or only call in once you have the actual setup strike position?
So it kind of works in a various ways. Ultimately, there's a finite amount of assets in an AO, and you, as much as you might want them, you might not have priority for them. However, calling in mortars is a big part of being a sniper. I often try and tell this, and I try and explain it in my live streams and stuff as well. With your sniper rifle, you can kill one person, but with mortars, you can wipe out an entire grid square. They are such a massive amount of firepower. So say if we were sort of overrocking a position like this and we wanted to soften it up before, our sort of main group of the main body of the force comes down this road to enter into here, we'd just absolutely hammer it with mortars, and we'd just tell them to adjust fire and stuff like this. That's going to have way more of an effect than just firing a bullet at potentially, one person on a machine gun. You're going to cause so much more damage. So, however, we do have the mission to kill the officer. So what we could do is we could tee up the fire mission. We could let the mortar line know if that asset's available and we want to call it in. We can tee it up, and then the spotter we'd get eyes on the officer. I drop the officer. As I drop the officer, once he's dead, you call in the mortars. Boom, job's a good one. So it's like a synchronized thing. I hit the officer, we start mortaring it. Because we run the risk, if we start mortaring this, the officer goes, goes to cover, gets in the basement, heads to his ops room, starts coordinating an attack.
Got the castle off to the right there.
Probably try and give that a wide berth. We've got no idea if it's occupied or not. We'll just try and give it a bit of a wide berth. So I can see a few people down there on that helipad. Still getting no eyes of an officer though. Got any visual? I can see what looks to be like a different troop. He's got a radio backpack. It's a different kind of camouflage. Two of them on that main road.
I think I got eyes on the officer right now. Actually, he is walking from the tents on the right, or camo nets on the right. Oh, there's the HQ right there. So yeah, I think he just walked from it towards the helipad. He's behind the crane, the left crane.
Where those two troops are heading now?
Yes. Yep.
Roger.
I think
still on.
Yeah, I can't see him now. He's out of visual. So as the spawner, what kind of information would I be giving? Like, how do you even communicate with your teammate in terms of relaying information? Is it like what we're doing? Like, oh, I saw the officer of the the VIP or HVT, and he's leaving Camonet, or like how would you go about communicating succinctly about a lot of different things that you spot? Do you just mark them all down on a map, or how does that look?
No, so we're never going to mark anything on a map because if one of us gets waxed and the map gets falls into somebody's hand, they've got their map markings all over it. What we'd normally do if we were going to write anything down on a map is we'd have a piece of clear paper that goes over the top. We'll write it on that, and we can always ditch that. Yeah, I've got eyes on the officer now, heading back to that tent. Yeah, I see him. But what we'd normally do is we would lie here like this, maybe, half hour to an hour, and we'd have kind of an informal chat about this. You see those two guys over there? Yeah, I see him. You see him running up there? Yeah, that guy's been stood at that Arsenal for a while. We'd have like an informal chat between us about what we can see. Remember, like I said, we're probably going to be working together. We're both very competent. We're confident in each other's abilities. We don't need to be very, very strict. We can talk about what we're seeing. And then what would normally happen is you would then get on the radio and you would start relaying properly about what kind of things we've seen. You'd start giving, accurate spot reps, or you're going to give off a salute report, which is size, activity, location, uniform, time, and equipment. This is kind of information you're going to be giving over the radio to build up an accurate battle picture back at our HQ. You'll also give maybe a tax report, which is a weapon sighting report. Say if you can see a large amount of heavy weaponry, you'll give a tax report, which is type, ammo, carriage, and sights. So, it's a 12.7 machine gun that's placed on a tripod. It's got, it's box fed or belt fed. It's got, some kind of long range optic on it. These are all kind of things that we can build up a good battle picture and understand the strengths and weaknesses of this position. You'll be kind of constantly, once we've figured out what we like, what we've seen here, we will send that up to our sort of chain of command, and then they can start building a battle picture. We're pretty close. I'm pretty confident I can work out where we are on the map because we're right above quite a prominent junction.
Yep.
On the map.
I think
fairly confident we are 096013. Yeah, we're like there, yeah.
And obviously, for everyone at home, reading maps. If you you go left to right, and then up to or bottom to top in terms of reading the digits. So 096.
Along the corridor and up the stairs, yeah.
Yep.
So we can do this. We can do this two ways. We can measure it with our pen and draw that along to where we think that's going to be. And then we can measure it with our protractor and work out exactly how far away we are.
But based on the map, roughly to that command tent, it's about 600, if I'm reading that right.
I got 600 as well.
Yeah.
I got 600. So we can do it that way, or we can just swag it, which is where we count the boxes. So we count the boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So between 600 to 700 meters is what we're working with. Swag, if you don't know what that means, is scientific wild ass guess.
Yeah. I think, I'm assuming guesstimation versus trying to get very specific. And obviously you said the spotter would be doing a lot of those calculations on terms of distances and stuff like that too.
Yeah, exactly. So if we miss it, it is your fault.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Now that you have the location and the position, what things would you prioritize with calling in for the mortars? Would it just be a general area of that end of that port, or would you try to target specific things? Obviously, mortars aren't that accurate, but
yeah. I mean, me personally, I would just call it in that general area. Perhaps, maybe, as a sniper, you are supposed to be a trained observer. You are supposed to be able to get them, exactly where you want them, the same as if a forward observer would. However, me personally, I would just get it sort of in that general area. But yeah, some of the forward observers out there are so talented, and probably there's some snipers who are absolute wizards with it too. But yeah, we just kind of soak that whole area.
So there is an attack helicopter and a BRDM. Which thing would you prioritize first if you had to hit like multiple targets? Would it be air assets or ground targets, or? I
mean, so there is a target priority list, and that starts with the number one. So officers are at the top. That's kind of the person you wanna be hitting first. There is an actual target list. I'll pull it up now. Yeah, so the first thing you want to be hitting is officers and NCOs. Then you're going to want to be hitting signalers, who are like, radios, people like that, people that can call in reinforcements or, mortars or whatever it might be. Then it's going to be like crew serve weapons, machine guns, anti-tank missile teams, mortar teams. Then you're going to want to try and hit equipment. Then you're going to want to try and hit optics, not really so much as us now because of the time we're in, but, perhaps they have thermal imaging, tripod, stuff like that to scan areas. Would get rid of that. And then grounded aircraft as well would be at the bottom of that list. The only time that will change is if there is another sniper in that AO. If we are engaged or we spot another sniper team in the AO that we're in now, they are immediately straight to the top of the priority list. So because they're basically us, they can they can make our lives misery the same way we can make theirs. So say we want to hit the officer, and then we go, oh, actually, shit, there's a sniper team in that crane. We need to get rid of them first because they're probably going to be able to find us a lot quicker than anybody else down there because they know how we think and stuff like that. So it's always going to be officers and then working our way down that priority list. However, for the purposes of this, if we're going to call in mortars, I'm absolutely going to call in mortars on that BRDM first because he's going to be able to get rounds down range at us so much faster than that helicopter will be able to take off and engage us. Even though that helicopter's probably got a lot of rockets on it, that BRDM, someone could just jump in that. They don't even have to turn it on. They could just spin it and start lighting us up. So if we want to take something out, it's going to be that first.
Yeah. So what would it look like or sound like for calling in something to a mortar team? Obviously, the spotter's probably the guy doing the radio and for that. But just pretend again. I don't know what I'm doing, and what would you do?
Yeah, so the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to give them a precise grid reference. The bigger the grid reference you can give them, the better. You're going to want to tell them where you are. You should be given a 10-figure grid for both you and what you're aiming at. That's going to be the best way to do it. However, 8-figure grids are okay. Then you're going to want to basically call them in. You're going to tell them, what type of fire mission they're going to be doing, how many guns you want online, what you're firing at is a good one as well. Is it enemies in the open? Is it, whatever? Is it dug in positions? You're going to want to tell them how you're going to hit it. Are they just going to fire when they're ready? Are you going to call it in fire? So, for example, we would say, this is just a complete bluff. You would say, mortar team, this is sniper team. We're going to call in a fire mission. Just fire, one gun, high explosive, grid. We'd read our grid. Enemy infantry dug in, 3 to 5 personnel in the open at my command. That would kind of look like that's not 100% accurate, but that's a pretty good format for what it would look like.
And you said earlier that you would prioritize hitting that officer first before trying to do, call in the fire mission. Just to make sure that because you said the officers are at the top of the priority list, so and so he doesn't squirrel away.
Yeah, exactly right. And if we've been sent here to get rid of this officer, that's our number one priority. If we can then use mortars to come landing down on top of us, on top of them when we leave, or to then soften the base up, it entirely depends on what the mission is. If we've only been sent here to get rid of this officer, we will come, get rid of the officer, and we'll leave, and that'll be that. But say we want to soften it up or destroy some of their assets. They've got a lot of assets here. There's absolutely no reason if the assets weren't available to us, we couldn't say, look, there's a lot of assets just sat about in the open air. Let's hit this with mortars or artillery and get rid of some of it. Then, that's perfectly acceptable. It's very mission specific on why you would or wouldn't call in that sort of fire support.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. So let's see what he does.
So in a sense of like an Arma, let's say you're playing on an Arma server, right? Obviously, your mission is very specific for this in the scenario. But let's say that you're going to go look for that enemy commander, and when you're playing HQC or something like that, and he's hanging out at the main base. do you do the same kind of thing, or do you just kind of hit him and run? Like, what would be your strategy there?
Um, yeah, I mean, hit and run would be best. Hit and run would be best. Because then it gives the longer you stay in position, especially if you're hitting a commander, they should, in theory, just instantly be getting clearance patrols out to come and find you and flush you out. So in that instance, I would hit and run. However, there have been times where I've had to take up quite overt positions, and I've just held there as long as I possibly can to do as much damage as I can to really sap the numbers of maybe a push, or maybe we're just every time we're eliminating somebody who is defending a point, we're draining supplies at that point, not letting them respawn. So yeah, it really does depend on the situation, but hitting and running is normally the safest bet, but it depends on what you think you can achieve by staying. Well, I mean, I've got an angle. If you got an angle, we can punch this if you want.
Okay.
All
I
right,
think I have a good shot here. I'm at 600. That range
I'm at
is done.
600.
All right. You give the mark. Would it be like a countdown, or when is the usual signal to fire?
So we can go. Snipers will fire on 3, and then we'll count down from 5 to 0. And when I say 3, we fire. So we'll wait for him to face us again, give us a wider shot, rather than trying to punch a round through his.
Oh, like
There
that.
we go. So fire on 3, 5, 4, 3.
Oh,
Yeah, he's down. But I think we did a pretty good job there. If you want, as the designated mortar man, having had your mortar lesson, you can start calling in mortars, and we can light that place up if you want.
yeah. I'm hearing the distant thuds. Oh, there, that guy just dropped.
Oh yeah, nice.
Oh, that one went. Oh, wow. His dispersion is crazy. But yeah, so you'd use those explosions while they're kind of panicking right now to kind of slip
Yeah, and
your
then
way
I'd
out.
probably start heading away now while they're worrying about what on earth is how on earth their morning's gone so badly.
I guess now that we've already called in the fire support and we're leaving here, what are some like common mistakes that you see with people calling in like fire missions, whether it be in Arma or in general, I guess in real life too, but like what are some things that people
Um,
should think about when they're trying to use them or call them in?
the number one thing I see is people like getting a massive fire mission called in, and they've not even worked out if they're on yet. So normally I would say like call one in, and then from there you can kind of test and adjust rather than being like, oh, I see him, oh, give me 5 rounds on that target, and then they're all in the sea, and then they've just spent 5 times firing into the sea. You've used a load of supplies or whatever. Whereas, so a common thing you do is called bracketing. So you'll fire one high, you'll fire one low, and then you'll kind of walk them in into the middle. It's called bracketing fire. That's kind of the best thing I would say to do, and I see a lot of people not doing it. They'll say, "Oh yeah, I see whatever," call in a load of mortars on that, and none of them land. Whereas, like I did with you, let's call one in. Okay, let's bring him right a little bit. Let's call another one in. Okay, he's on, but his dispersion's a little wacky. Let's give him 5 rounds. Now he knows he's on. He can just wang him off. Whereas there's no point wanging a load off, not even being on, and then having to be like bringing it and adjusting it. The other thing I see is just people not taking into consideration where the mortar pit is to them, and they'll be like, "Oh, come left a bit, come left a bit." And if they're at a 45-degree angle, say the mortars are firing from south, they're at a 45-degree angle to the east, and they're saying, "Oh, come left a bit, come left a bit." Well, come left a bit doesn't mean a lot anyway. You should really try and give it to them in mils. But your left is going to be their drop because you're coming from the east and you're telling them to come left, and they go, "Okay, I'll come left." Well, that's now west for you. because you're coming from the east. So it's relaying what you're seeing to the position of the mortar pit. And in theory, that should be the mortar team's job to work out. So you'll tell them where you are, and if you say you need to come left, the mortar team should be able to go, well, I know where they are because they gave me that grid reference at the start. So I need to adjust that actually that's going to be dropped for us. But because that's quite complicated, and most people on the mortars are not going to think like that, I think the best thing you can do if you want to call in mortars is to just say, is to do the calculations for them. So if it's left for you, but it's drop for them, tell them to drop. Don't expect them to work it out.
All right, I guess we better get out of here before the patrols run up here and kill us.
Yeah, that would be a bad day.
I think officially we could say this mission's been a success, but no, Alex, thanks again for taking the time to come and show us a thing or two and understanding a little bit more about the dynamics of a sniper pair here. I definitely learned a bit. I think many others will too.
Hey, no worries, man. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Before we wrap up, though, is there anything you'd like to say to the community or anything you'd like to give a shout out to?
No, not really. Just a big shout out to the guys over at BI for creating such a fantastic game. This is I did not think what has been achieved with Reforger could ever be achieved with an Arma game, to be honest. I started my journey of Arma was sort of 20 FPS playing King of the Hill on low graphics. So to be able to play this in sort of max settings, well over 100 FPS. I know there's some issues with system to system, and there's always problems, but I think what you guys have achieved here is just short of incredible, And the fact is, 19 gigabyte. How have you done that? What black magic are you using over there? It's crazy. So just a big shout out to you guys for actually pulling this off.
Oh, awesome. Well, again, a huge thank you to you for doing this, and thank you to everyone who tuned in and watched this. Once again, I'm Dillers. Until the next TacTalk, I guess we'll see you on the battlefield. Or hopefully not, I guess, as a sniper team.